As we talk about the state of our democracy. Joining us now, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution and contributing writer for The Atlantic, Shadi Hamid. He's the author of the new book entitled The Problem of Democracy, America, the Middle East, and the Rise and Fall of an Idea. I have a feeling this is a very sad book, so no. I want to start by asking about the problems within our democracy that we face today, why it matters so much around the world.
Yeah, well, I think this is the fundamental issue and question of our time is what do we do when democracy produces bad outcomes?
Right.
And when I was living in the Middle East about 10 years ago, politics was existential. So much was at stake. And right-wing religious parties came to power through elections, and then a lot of people freaked out. You had military coups, that sort of thing. So I thought that was a foreign thing, a Middle Eastern thing. I come back to D.C. for Trump's election in 2016, 2017, and we're no longer talking about health care or marginal tax rates. We're talking about the foundational questions of what it means to be a nation, what it means to be American. And those are scary topics because how do you compromise on them, right? And that's sort of where we're at now, where a lot of Republicans are not willing to accept Democratic outcomes they don't like. And also, I assume that if Trump wins in 2024, a lot of Democrats won't be willing to accept that result. So that, to me, is really what we're contending with, is how do we come to terms with this reality?
And, Jonathan, we've always grappled with getting people to participate in our democracy, to vote. Mm-hmm. It seems different now. It's not just participate, but please defend our democracy. And I'm not sure we've seen a situation like this where it's at stake.
Yeah, I mean, turnout has gone up in recent years, partially probably the Trump effect, people who either love or hate him, and some of those who hate him fearful of what he would mean to our democracy. So let's get your assessment here. You laid out the case as to these worrying signs. Do you believe that the pillars of our democracy, the foundation of our democracy, is strong enough to withstand this?
I think so. I think that we as Americans have a tendency to muddle through things that get bad, but when our backs are against the wall, we find a way to make it work. I think the reaction to Trump trying to overturn the election, I mean, America was resilient there. I mean, there's still obviously pretty serious issues, but our democracy survived. But I think 2024 will be the test where a lot of this will come into play. And if I had one message for Americans, it would be, I would like each and every person to commit to respecting democratic outcomes, even if the other side wins, even if they see the other side as being threatening to their lives, their communities. They have to make that private and hopefully public commitment if they're in positions of influence. And that's something that each of us can do, but we have to be serious about it.
Right.
As we look to 2024, because my former boss also talked about how one Trump term is one thing, two Trump terms is another thing.
Totally different thing, yeah.
What lessons should Americans take from what has happened around the world if there are extended years of a government in place who's fighting against democracy and fighting against fundamental rights of people? What could happen with more years?
Yeah, well, so you're right that it's a universal thing. And we can talk about Europe has its own cases where in Italy we might have the first far-right prime minister since Mussolini. And that person will have come to power through elections. Or the Sweden Democrats, a party with neo-Nazi origins. So it's not just America, it's happening all over the place because we're not debating economic issues anymore. We're debating cultural issues, identity issues, issues around religion. So I think we have to accept that people who we completely disagree with are sometimes going to win. So there's 74 million Trump supporters, voters. We can't just wish them away. They're not going to disappear. So then we have to find a way to live with them, even if we think they're bad people, even if we think they're a threat to everything we hold dear, because what's the other option that's in front of us? And that's a challenge because a lot of people will say, well, they're deplorable and we can't find a way to live with them.
Michael.
Isn't it a little bit ironic, though, that you reference Italy, for example, and Sweden and elsewhere, where you have this sort of a hard right autocratic attitude that then manifests itself in candidates that then get elected through the democratic process. So democracy is part of elevating this element that is hell-bent on deconstructing democracy. How does that work, and how should citizens view that? You referenced leaders before, talking about here in America. It matters who we elect. I mean, we have always looked at our leaders as an extension of us, right? They represent us. So basically, are we seeing now that we really are at our core more anti-democratic than we think we are?
So I think there are a lot of Americans now, but also in Europe, you have these parties that are anti-immigrant. They don't respect individual rights as much as we might like. So in that sense, they're not liberals. They're not true liberals. And I think then we have to lower our expectations of what democracy can offer. Democracy doesn't always lead to these other good things, whether it's equal rights, gender equality, minority rights. There is a tension sometimes when you have these parties that come to power and don't actually believe in these things. So I tend to see democracy more as a mechanism to regulate conflict. It doesn't have to be this big, amazing utopia thing where we get everything that we want. And if we want to protect individual rights, then whoever we think our party then, or Democrats or whichever party stands up for those, then vote for them. Make your case to the American people. You can't rely on the Supreme Court or other institutions. You have to persuade voters.
The new book is entitled The Problem of Democracy, America, the Middle East, and the Rise and Fall of an Idea. Shadi Hamid, thank you very much for coming on the show. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.